I'm pro marketplace, pro free enterprise, because there you are questioning and doubtful of the practice of business, which is to get the edge on the competition by having your whole calling perhaps turn into a licensed occupation, right? That way you can keep out the competition, you can keep out the young rivals who have the better ideas and the better methods than you. You can make them suffer, you can drive up their costs, and then you can achieve economies of scale, where you have your own legal department that deals with government harassment, regulatory harassment, and the little guy can't. He simply can't. And so you get bigger and bigger, and fewer people enter your field because it has become a cartel. We are living in a country of cartels all around. Some protected by law, others protected by subvention, by subsidy and convenience granted by the state. And we don't have a free market today. Though there are many instances of the free market working, there are many entrepreneurs who are doing a great job providing services to their customers, thinking in terms of the customer effectively. I would like to suggest obeying the scriptures, where Christ tells his people to look out for the other first, and to think about the equity of caring for the neighbor first, and then yourself. That is the whole Christian message. And every entrepreneur, whether he is a practicing Christian or not, who does that will prosper, because he's living out the ideals of service to the other. The main service, of course, to mankind being the death of Christ on the cross for his people. That's the main example, and the thing that is effective in God saving mankind, man by man, woman by woman, child by child, by that propitious and propitiating death on the cross. The Christian argument works in the marketplace, where the entrepreneur looks for the interest of his customer and saves that customer money, time, trouble, drives his costs down, his efficiencies up, and lets him get that profit that he needs to expand his business and increase his service. But we don't have that. While the principle is always operating, I suggest that men have raised through the state nowadays, through the state and through the banking process, many obstacles for the fair play and the even-handedness of this market. We have inurement galore in the modern plantation economy, as we could call it. We'd like to have here in Chattanooga and Helena County a free market, and we're working our way in that direction. It'll take a couple hundred years, perhaps, for there to be some major breaks in that for your gain and for my gain and those of our children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren. This is David Tulis, pro free enterprise, maybe not so much pro business, as I say again, because business will seek its own favor and use the state for its own protection, and not allow, in the end, a free market. We have, in many ways, a government-owned economy. And to look into how that works, and to look into how we get past that, we are here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7, live on Facebook at Nooga Radio, and also live on YouTube at Hot News Talk Radio on your smartphone at the TuneIn Radio app. Just get that app on your smartphone and just have us as your favorite station. And so even if you're out and about and maybe out of range of our powerful pulsating signals, you can get us and hear what we have to say. Sean Hannity at 3 o'clock, Alex Jones at dinner time, and Colin Cowherd in sports just at lunchtime. Now, here in Chattanooga, we have working to help people get connected with the economy that's there, is John Schaerer. He is a volunteer. He's 75 years old and has spent his life in the teaching profession in public schools. At the university level, most recently with the chancellors at UTC, Bill Stacy, Fred O'Bear, and one other, Chancellor Brown. And he's been involved in his professional calling in the idea of transfers, tech transfers, the Riverbend Tech Institute, where there are the ideas of transferring knowledge that's generated in the subsidized sector to the private sector. That's a very worthy goal. And he's also an organizer at the Sim Center. Well, John, you're working on a program or an initiative. You call it an initiative that's called the Talent Dividend Initiative. What is that about? How are you trying to help people like my listener and people that my listener knows who could use some furthering in their professional and their personal development?
Well, one specific way, David, is earning credit for prior learning. That is what an individual has learned on the job in their life experiences working in the as a volunteer in public and private ventures. Now, this is a policy that higher education has adopted and is putting into practice, whereby the individual can develop a portfolio documenting what has been learned. That document then is evaluated by professors in the discipline in which they are interested in completing their degree. And then the result can be waiving of specific courses for which the individual has demonstrated knowledge and competency. This is
the course is waived, but he gets the credit.
He gets the credit. That's correct. And of course, we've had I've had one person that was involved with the nuclear engineering. It's a 4-year plant, and they go through enormous training, almost weekly, that documented this, and he amassed an evaluation that showed 39 credits toward an associate degree, which puts him a little over halfway to completing the associate degree and a long way toward completing the baccalaureate degree. So it's each institution that's listed on the website, which is betterbydegrees.org. That's betterbydegrees.org. Each institution is listed there. An institutional contact person is there with a telephone number and an email address. They are prepared to address your interest in fulfilling your dream to complete a college education. That's betterbydegrees.org. And this is all about talent. It's scripturally, you can go back to, it's connected with God's plan, and not to be consumed by temporal things such as an argument on being business-centric and government-centric. We are civic-centric in terms of talents that individuals have. You remember in the scripture in Matthew, we see about the talents of servants left by their master. One had 5, one had 2, one had 1. And what happened? The one that had 5 doubled it.
He was trading. He was in business.
Yes. A good business, huh? And the one that had 1, he just buried it. He didn't do anything with it. And what we are taking a position on is each person has God-given talent. I mean, earlier David was mentioning some of these young people that are in gangs are brilliant young people, very creative, very innovative, and somehow that needs to be captured and built upon in order for them to become assets to society and not liability.
Now, for our YouTube viewer and our Facebook viewer, thanks for joining us there. I'm holding up a thing. It looks like a very heavy book, an old book. There's no title on the side, but it looks like it's got the silver lines here that suggest pages, but it's an empty box. Now, John Schaerer of Talent Dividend Initiative, why did you bring this book in, this box or book in here? What is it supposed to show?
It illustrates through metaphor that it's up to the individual in order to fill this box in terms of applying their skills and talents over a lifetime. And you look at a lifetime of work nowadays is about 40 years. It's not 30 years and out and retire. It's about 40 years. So it's up to the individual to take the initiative and the responsibility to pursue their talents and put them to the best use. And I should say this, if the individual can't be a superhighway, then be a major thoroughfare. If you can't be the sun, be a star. And it isn't just the size that affects whether you win or lose, but it's all about being the best at what you undertake.
And if you can't be a major thoroughfare, John Schaerer, well, then maybe be a nice side street lined with some beautiful trees and some apartments. And if you can't be a side street that has some has some nice diversions on it. It could be a healthy alley, perhaps, where you can take a shortcut from one major thoroughfare to another, right?
Right. The point is, be the best at whatever you do, regardless.
However many talents you have, whether you have 1 or 5.
That's correct. That's right.
Well, now, go ahead. Talk on.
Well, in terms of what this talent translates into for business and industry, of which we want them to join with us and support this initiative, is that through research, the Milken Institute, for example, out of California, a fellow by the name of Ross Duvall did a report entitled "Degrees Matter." Adding 1 year of education to the worker who has at least a high school education results in a real GDP growth of approximately 17.4%. Real wage growth in terms of about 17.8. So,
well, back up just a second. I'm sorry, I'm not catching the numbers here. Are you saying that if every worker in the country added 1 year of education to his total, it would create GDP growth of?
That's right, 17.4%.
You're saying every worker who's now in the workforce?
Are within a particular metropolitan area. They studied 261 metro areas, and this was the result that they found.
So what you're saying, extrapolating from that report, if the people in the Chattanooga area, here, our listener, and everybody like you, added 1 year of official schooling to your record, that would add to the GDP of our area.
That's correct.
Is that what you're suggesting?
That's right. And in Hamilton County, we've got 558,229 individuals, some college, no degree. Now, if there's just a 1% gain in that, and pardon me for looking at this table, but
go ahead.
The net annual income of that was around $2.5 million annually. The net property tax income is around $3 million. The net state and local tax revenue is around $2 million. And then the net public assistance reduction, welfare, so forth, is around $800,000, giving a county total of $8,238,430. So there's an economic impact that's a return on the investment that's valuable.
Well, those figures make me smile just a little bit, John Schaerer, because they're all figures that talk about government getting more money. And I'm not, why do we want to have more local talent if the means of measurement is increase in government receipts?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but businesses have to have essential infrastructure. So they've got to have roads and highways to do the commerce.
You're saying government is getting more because the private sector that generates that tax base is getting bigger.
More. That's right.
Okay.
And there's prosperity for all. It's not just the government. It's not just the business, but it's also the individual that's making it all possible.
Now, you're doing this as a volunteer, John. You're 75 years old, been most of your life in public education sector. What are you seeing in the entrepreneurial side that you didn't see when you were employed in the state cartel for education? What are you seeing now, not being employed by that system, that didn't come to you, that hadn't come to you before?
Well, contrary to your notion here, the state cartel and my involvement in higher education was directly related to tech transfer and the enhancement of what comes from intellectual property from faculty and research is translated into business enterprises that are productive, that help grow the economy.
What do you know about the state's effort to capitalize businesses, drawing them into Tennessee? I think even eSpin with Jay Doshi, you mentioned earlier, was one of the members of that program, but it lost money for the taxpayers, according to stories in the past 6 months in the Tennessean.
Interestingly enough, I was in a training session for 39 economic development people that work for the state the last 2 days. And unfortunately, education was not given much attention, which to me is the lifeblood of economic development. And of course, these are minions that work on site development. And so they kind of work on the old platform of a strong back, low wage, and cheap real estate. Nowadays, the paradigm is a strong mind, a desire to excel, and reasonable wage. But when I explained to him what we were trying to do with Talent Dividend, and he's from Hickman County, which is right there in the Nashville area, and he said, "Oh, I see. This could be a value-added piece to our economic recruitment of business and industry if we can demonstrate that Hickman County collectively is working toward building a talent base here to draw business and industry." Now, that's supported too by research. Enrico Marietti, a economist out of University of California, Berkeley, so some good things come out of those places. He has a book entitled "The Geography of New Jobs," and part of his premise is that the paradigm has shifted from individuals who have to go out and look for employment in businesses elsewhere, out of the county, out of the region, out of the state, out of the country for that matter, that businesses are now attracted to where the talent is. And that's what Talent Dividend is about, facilitating the production of a talent base that is attractive to people who want to do business.
Give us a call and tell John Schaerer just briefly who you are and what your situation is. The number is 800-8949. That's 800-8949. This is David Tulis. We're talking with John Schaerer, who's a volunteer promoter of Talent Dividend Initiative, trying to get more people to have degrees and add personal value, personal earnings in their own lives, and also looking at the larger perspective of the city of Chattanooga and other areas around it, increasing the overall economic value of the region. John, you mentioned the 16 counties and the 44 cities, part of the Thrive 2055 theme and program. Give an evaluation, your evaluation of Thrive 2055. What is it about? Is it dangerous, or is it a good concept and program?
Well, I think the intent is good. I'm not that familiar with all the initiatives they've undertaken. I know it's been a rather protracted progression over several years, and I don't get a sense that there's really any momentum. But we have capitalized on the education component of that in a way that I hope that they see that it is beneficial to their initiative.
Well, my own analysis of Thrive 2055 is that if you follow the money, you can look into that effort, and it seems to me an effort to have a kind of regional government aggregating around the city of Chattanooga, these other counties, these 15 other counties outside of Hamilton, and that the goal appears to be to have a more coherent voice by which to petition for federal money. And the way I heard the interviews that I was given about that program, which is taxpayer funded, it seems to be about better getting free dollars out of Washington than doing what Dave Crockett has proposed of becoming over time a kind of an independent-minded city-state, which is what his idea of citystate.org is. Of course, that group is not active now, but it was at the time in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, promoting the idea of city-states sort of being independent and acting apart from state jurisdictions, even county jurisdictions, and seeing cities as kind of an economic center, an economic hub. What is your idea, just in a nutshell, what is your idea of the future of Chattanooga? Can we become more independent, or are we going to be bound by Washington and Nashville?
Well, I hope that we're not bound by Washington or Nashville. And the simple thing we want to put out is the message that we learn, engage, and lead, and coming from a civic-centric organization. And we will welcome the business and industry to join with us.
What's the website again?
The website is betterbydegrees.org. betterbydegrees.org.
This is David Tulis. John Schaerer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, David. I enjoyed it.
John Schaerer is a volunteer at Talent Dividend Initiative, and the goal, as that effort, that program describes it, is building a stronger workforce and economy good for employees, companies, Chattanooga region, and higher education. This is David Tulis. We're brought to you by the website for the man who matters, Nooganomics.com. That's Nooganomics.com.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM.
Now, me being a radio guy, I'm really not good with vehicles. Never changed my own oil, can barely change a tire. And sometimes when I hear a clanking, I just